Hi, I'm looking for Ray Finkel. Ooh, and a clean pair of shorts. What's going on, YouTube? Yep, another video back to back. Don't expect this often. Don't expect me to do this all the damn time. Take it what you will. I don't care. But obviously, I mentioned in the last video how I talked about nu metal somewhat briefly. And in the video before then, if you were paying attention, and if you have this channel subscribed, you would also know that I went in chronological order as to how my music taste evolved over the course of time. And then the genre that followed right after nu metal was death metal. The genre that's very fictitious about gore, blood, and killing people. The majority of death metal isn't always about that. Some of it is, outside from the norm. Sometimes it's about mythology. Sometimes it's about random topics that really doesn't make sense, but they make it work. And then obviously there's the very, very graphic stuff that is sometimes in terms of sex with dead bodies. But the weird thing about death metal is that despite the fact that it's mostly fictitious 9 out of 10 times, and I'll explain that later on in this video, what brings a lot of people forward towards death metal is the aggressive delivery that death metal has. From the drumming aspect to the vocal aspect, and then you have the technical side with sometimes either bass or guitar riffs. You get a little bit of everything with death metal, and it's delicious. And then, of course, with death metal, you cannot ignore the feeling of wanting to slam somebody with all of your force just to pick them up and do it all over again. It's fun. It's mosh pitting. It's great. You release a lot of stuff. Or sometimes you could be like me and get whacked in the face and get 8 stitches. Yeah, mosh pits are violent, people. And you obviously get a lot of variations of mosh pitting when it comes to death metal. And the one thing that's always requested with death metal is the wall of death. It's a thing, people. Wake up. And what the wall of death is, it's pretty much like you're making a sandwich of human bodies. And you have a left side of the room, which is your right because of how you're looking at this. And then you have the right side of the room, which is your left because you're looking at this in an odd way. And then you take the two and then you just go, now go. Human sandwich. And then you have the really brave souls that like to stand in the middle and wait for the instant to happen, and they get smushed. And I know that's a fetish and that's weird. But death metal does have a lot of roots, not just in the United States, but all over the world. Some of it is unique in its own way because of that reason. And there is a lot of death metal to go through. And believe it or not, death metal is an extension of thrash metal. It's just heavier. And I really have not much death metal left in my collection. I had a plethora of stuff, and yeah, in my previous channel that I had a lot of black metal, and I had various amounts of other genres and subgenres in my collection. And while I was prepping for this video, I then realized, wow, death metal, I don't have a lot of death metal anymore. With this video, I managed to find some really solid albums by solid bands, and I hope you get to enjoy about every single album and as to why I enjoy them. I mentioned at some point in this channel that I discovered one band at a very young age, even though it was right around the time where the band was picking up a lot of speed. Bloodbath. Michael Elkefeld's Roars. Now this album is the debut album of Bloodbath, and this is from, their demo, which only had like 4 fucking songs, but this was the aftermath after that. A lot of after. I struggled a bit explaining that. But this album was an album that I was so just jaw-dropped. And I still will always remember when I did get this album on CD at the time, and listening to the CD while walking through a cemetery. Like, I have that like engraved in my head of me doing that. Why was I doing that? I don't know. Maybe because cemetery is filled with a lot of dead people and dead people don't bother you. Yeah, I quoted something and I'll get to that. Don't worry about it. But yes, Bloodbath, Resurrection Through Carnage is pretty much an album that is somewhere in a list for everybody when they go down the list of what death metal albums stick out to them, and they would more than likely will have this album on that list somewhere. The one thing that I do like about this album is that it's very different as to oppose normal death metal. Like, obviously death metal, like I said, is always about gore and killing people, zombie shit, not actual zombie shit, but you get what I mean. Like, stuff about zombies, fake stuff. And the death metal has its way with just painting a picture in your mind, and this album does it a little bit differently, and it's really good because it's different. It's different and it's good. One thing I do like about this particular pressing of this album is I got it on red because Bloodbath, and red's my favorite color aside from black. They go with each other. But Bloodbath is a band from Sweden that has had many and multitude of band member changes, mainly singer, because Michael faded in and out because, you know, he has Opeth as another band, and, you know, Opeth is good too. And I know that right now Bloodbath's current singer goes by the name of Old Nick, and he is from Paradise Lost. Paradise Lost. Wow, that was just brain fog. Wow. I need some fucking caffeine. Why is it spicy? But Bloodbath, really solid band. Resurrection Through Carnage, really solid album. There's a multitude of other Bloodbath albums to enjoy, and there are so many songs that are really good off of this album. My favorite one is Call My Name, because wow. And obviously there is a multitude of other songs off this album that are just as good, but that one. Now, when I meant earlier in this video as to how death metal is very, very fictitious because it's meant to give you like an image in your head, and that's really it. There's like nothing real about it at all. And the one band that does really captivate, painting a lot of pictures in your head, it's a band that a lot of people enjoy, and it's really hard to ignore. And the band in itself is really fucking awesome to see live. It's even though like I've personally have seen the band, I don't know, like anywhere between 10 to 15 fucking times, because it's been that much as to how much I've seen this band live. But it never gets old, even though they are getting old. But they still deliver the music as if age doesn't matter. And the one band that is relatively, I would say, one of, if not probably the big heavy hitter of the death metal scene, Cannibal Corpse. And yeah, this album is just simply titled Kill. And the one thing that Cannibal Corpse has always done with their albums is they have a guy that does comic book style artwork for their albums, and here's a prime example of what it looks like sometimes. Yeah. But yeah, I thoroughly enjoy this album, and there are, again, a lot of other albums that Cannibal Corpse has done over the fucking, I don't know, 30 plus years of them being a band, because they've been around for a while. And this album, I remember just playing it and it just being so loud, so crisp, so clear. I was baffled as to like, wow, where was the sound quality production in their previous albums? Like, where the fuck was it? And it's because Eric Rutan, he did an awesome job with that. Like, he's a mastermind at sound, like making sure everything is crisp. This album and this band, as an entity as it is, They have such a plethora of music that they always play 9 out of 10 times whenever they play live. And the one question that you always ask yourself, and not just to yourself, but I actually asked it to, Corpse Grinder, which is the front man of the band. And you will also know that his neck is very fucking big and thick. I'm being serious. And the best part about George Corpse Grind Fisher is that he's also a nerd, like a big nerd. Like he has the Horde symbol tattooed on him. That big guy's a nerd. But I remember there was one show where I saw Cannibal Corpse live, and in between him announcing songs, he was like, "All right, this next song is called," and my fucking dumb ass of a brave soul yelled, "What is the circumference of your neck?" And in mid-sentence, I cut off a big, terrifying man that is George Corpse Grind Fisher, and he's like, "Who the fuck said that?" And I was like, "Me." And jokingly, and obviously it is a joking manner, he pointed at me. He's like, "I will fucking kill you right now." And I said, "Yay." And then he just shook his head and he walked away, looked back at me and said, "Dude, I don't fucking know what the size of my neck is." And then my buddy at the time was like, "Figure it out." Death metal shows are fun sometimes and very comical. But Cannibal Corpse with Kill, it's an album that I feel is probably one of their best albums, and that's just my personal opinion. You can disagree or agree with that. I really don't care at the end of the day, but I do care because feedback is awesome. And then obviously, as I mentioned, death metal is nothing but a fantasy world, and most of the time it's, again, to paint a picture in your mind. Sometimes it's to put you in a mindset of being in a world far away from this one, if that makes any fucking sense. Because there are some death metal bands that talk about aliens. There are some bands that talk about other random stuff that we're very uncertain of. And then another band that dabbles with mythology in the death metal scene is Nile. Egyptian shit. This band is by far one of the most technical death metal bands to ever fucking cross the Nile River. Saw what I did there. Oh, fuck off, man. I need help. But Nile is just a death metal band that there is only one speed, and that is fast. Very fast. From the guitar riffs to the drumming is, it almost sounds as if it's not even a person behind the drum kit at times. It's that fast. And this album, there are so many good songs. You got Cast Down the Heretic, Sacrifice on a Sebek, you have Lashed to the Slave Stick. Good content. Probably not like this channel. I know, I'm talking down on myself, and I gotta stop doing that. But yes, Annihilation of the Wicked. This album was not my really true introduction to Nile. I mean, Ithyphallic was my introduction to Nile. I was late for the bus ride, yeah, I know. But Annihilation of the Wicked, this album, when I had the opportunity to get it, I was like, ooh, gimme. And I've seen Nile only once, and it was in a setting where the room probably could only fit, I don't know, 150 people, and there was about 300 people in it. Talk about nut to butt. And during the set, George Callias, the drummer of the band, broke his drum pedals because that's how fast the motherfucker drums. If you don't believe me, watch drum videos of him drumming. It'll blow you away. But Nile, with their gravitational focal point, which is Egyptian mythology and other various Egyptian topics, from the pharaohs and all that other mummy shit. Nile was the one that took that ideology and threw it into death metal, and this was the result. Well, not the result, but one of the many results. And yeah, Nile is death metal, but on a tech side. And if you were to listen to Nile, you would understand what I mean by that. Like, very, very, very quick, just like the music at times. And the one thing that is very prominent with death metal, not just with Nile, but the growling aspect of death metal, because again, it's thrash metal, but a little faster, but more ingy. And yeah, Annihilation of the Wicked by Nile is a really good album. I recommend it. Listen to it. Continuing on with how death metal is, it's supposed to be fictitious in a way. Sometimes you get some like weird like occultism shit. Like it happens. It happens. And one band that is, I would say it's black and death metal, because they were a black metal band at one point in the beginning of their career, and then they just dabbled with more death metal and more technical shit, I guess. And even though they kind of gotten more mainstream, and a lot of people feel like the band has been a sellout for like years and sometimes snobby, but the one band that takes occultism and throws it into death metal, and it's mainly occultism in such a way, and it's about praising Satan, you know, the evil guy, and that is Behemoth. This album, Zos Ki Occultus, is my favorite Behemoth album. And yeah. But this album is very, very technical, and I know that prior to this, they started to like evolve into this era of Behemoth. And I will say that this era of Behemoth is the best era of Behemoth. And yeah, I said what I said. And I know that, like, when I stumbled upon Behemoth originally, it was with the album Demigod. Which, Demigod was a good follow-up from this, but I still like this. I like this era of Behemoth. Like, it's good. It is good. It's good. And yeah, I haven't really been listening to, like, the newer Behemoth stuff, because the newer Behemoth stuff, like, it's good. It's not great. The last album that I think Behemoth did a solid job on was The Satanist. And then from there on out, it's just been... bring back this! But Behemoth has been around for quite some time, and they're not the only band that has dabbled with occultism and death metal one by one and side by side. There are other bands that have done it, and some longer than them. Like, there is a band called Hate, and they've been doing it, the black and death metal stuff, longer than Behemoth. Believe it or not. Check out the band Hate, and you'll understand what I mean. It's similar, but it's not similar. And yes, I did have a band, an album. And yes, I had an album by the band Hate, and it was their most latest album. Don't remember it. The title was long. It's escaping my mind. But Hate is another band that I honestly feel like if you like stuff like Behemoth, you'll like Hate, because it's... you wouldn't be able to notice the damn difference. I'll just leave it at that. Ooh, we are moving along. Moving along. Damn, I really have to fucking take a dump. I'm not even kidding, folks. I will try to speed through this as quick as I fucking can, because it be brewing. Now, the next album I have to talk to you about is a band, again, within genres of metal, there are subgenres of genres. And then there are subgenres of subgenres of genres. It's a rabbit hole. I have to poop. I can't hold it anymore. Flush number 2. Whew. The smell followed me. Wow. Now that my soul has left my body through my butthole. So like I mentioned, that how death metal is very, very complex, and there are subgenres within the genre, and then there's subgenres of that, and it's a giant flustercuck. And the one thing that I find relatively, I guess you can say, common with some of death metal is they use audio clips. I don't know why. And the one band that I feel made me question with the use of audio clip was a band that I did not know of until, I don't know, like 2011, 2012, around there. We discover stuff at different times. It happens, people, okay? It happens. And the one band that I figured I would talk about is Devourment. This band is just... Now, this album is called Butcher the Week. Yeah, death metal has a lot of very graphic and simple to the point album titles. Like, for example, Cannibal Corpse, Kill. But Devourment with Butcher the Week was my introduction to Devourment. What is Devourment? Devourment is death metal, but it's classified as slamming brutal death metal. What does that mean, you ask? Well, you see, when it comes to playing guitar, there are chords and power chords. When it comes to slamming death metal, it's a lot of chuggy riffs, like boom, 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 boom. There's a lot of that in this. Shut up, phone. And the introduction of this album is an audio sample clip of a person being interrogated of being involved with a mortuary and being accused of sleeping and having sex with dead bodies. Death metal is weird. And when I mentioned in the earlier part of this video of that how I listened to Bloodbath Resurrection Through Carnage while walking through a cemetery one day, because it is true, there is a lot of dead people in a cemetery, and yes, dead people do not bother you. The guy's reply to being interrogated in this audio sample clip, he says, well, here's the thing. The dead don't bother you. It's the living you gotta worry about. Yeah, spot on. But Butcher the Week, it's death metal that at the time I never heard be done in such a way before, and I was like, ooh, this is really good. Why is it so fucking fast though? And the one thing that I did not realize was anywhere humanly possible was gravity blast beats. That's the term that's used with drumming. I'll explain. So pretend that this can of soda is a snare drum. Okay? Gravity blast beats is doing this with the stick. You're not doing this. You're bouncing it like that, but at fast fucking speeds. It's ridiculous. There's a lot of gravity blast beats in this fucking album, let me tell you. But Devourment is not the only band that dabbles with gravity blast beats. The gravity beats are relatively profound and common, not just with death metal, but very extreme music in the metal scene. Look up how some of the songs are played, and you know what? I'll do you even one better. I'll leave links below so like that you don't have to do the looking. I'll do it for you. I'll do your job by doing more work for myself. I hate doing more work that I need to, people. Just go with what I tell you and just do it on your own time. Like, do I have to do it for you? Like, this is ridiculous. But yeah, Butcher the Week by Devourment. A really solid album. And, yeah. Don't have sex with dead people. That's gross. Woo! Now we're on to some fun stuff. And just when you thought that it could not get any more weirder and rather graphic, we're gonna go even fucking further, people. Now, with death metal being a pretty much more than likely a fictitious genre, and again, it's supposed to paint a picture in your mind, and 9 out of 10 times, if not all the time, it's nothing really serious. I mean, yeah, Bloodbath has had a song called Eaten, which is based off of a true story where a guy was willing to pay someone to eat him alive. Fact. But the one band that I stumbled upon late, and I mean so fucking late, I have kicked myself over and over again, not knowing what this band was, what they have done for work. It literally killed me inside. And the band has been on a hiatus for quite some time because of label reasons, and That's relatively common with bands. They just have disputes with, not just within the band themselves among members, but with record labels, because, you know, bands want to get paid more and not get fucked with money. And this band pretty much re-announced its return by being rather cryptic with videos, and it got me excited knowing that they were coming back, and I'm like, ooh, yes. And they are actually going to be playing in a festival that is another known as the Maryland Death Fest, which it is a 3-day festival in the state of Maryland, and yeah, it's fun times. And the band that is going to be at Maryland Death Fest is Dragged Into Sunlight. The reason why I'm bringing up this band up is because Dragged Into Sunlight is a death metal band that I say is one of the best death metal bands to ever fucking exist on this planet. Like, what they have done in not many albums is just mind-blowing. And the one album that a lot of people gravitate towards, Hatred for Mankind. Now you're probably wondering why this album is being displayed. Well, unlike Devourment using an audio sample that you don't know if it's relatively real or fake, both, this puppy right here is filled with audio sample tracks from front to back by real serial killers that have existed and lived. I'm not kidding. Like, you have Charles Manson, you have Eileen Wuornos, I think that's her name. I want to say that's her name. I don't recall. I don't remember. But her last name is fucking complex. And then you have Jeffrey Dahmer. Then you have the Iceman, where he goes into graphic detail of him giving a person 30 minutes to talk to God to hope to change the circumstances of what was about to happen. And after 30 minutes, he ended up killing him anyway. Like, sick and demented as fuck. But this album is what I would say is as real as death metal can be. Though Dragged Into Sunlight is not just death metal, there are like grind, doom, there are a little bit of everything, but this album is the album that a lot of people gravitate towards. Yeah, Dragged Into Sunlight has Widowmaker, which is more of their doomy album, and then they have other various demo works and split works, but Hatred for Mankind. Now, the reason why I mentioned this album out of, the not many works of Dragged Into Sunlight is because for next year for Maryland Death Fest, they're playing this album, front to back. Trust me when I say this, folks. I have always contemplated on going to Maryland Death Fest because it is a drive far, and it is fucking 3 days of being in Maryland, and it is probably gonna be expensive if I ever decide to go. But the fact that they're fucking going, and they're playing this front to back, when I found that out, nut! This album is the best death metal album, and the fact that this hasn't been pressed many times. Like, this is the colored variant of it in here, and I'll pull it out to prove it. But this album goes for well over $200. Why? It's because they've had problems with the label that printed it. That's why. And there's like a short press of this. But Dragged Into Sunlight, it's a little bit of everything, especially with this album, and yeah. If you've never heard Dragged Into Sunlight, we're going to change that today. Click the link below and enjoy. That's all I got to say. Like, enjoy. That is it for this video, folks. Hope you enjoy it. And, yeah. I will leave everything below in the description, and then you can go from there. Do with it what you will. And, yeah. My asshole is fucking puckering from that massive dump I just took. I know, that was really graphic. I didn't have to go and explain that, but, here we are. Now you have that information. You're welcome. But that's it for today's video, folks. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. And, yeah. I don't know what I'm going to do for the next video. I just might continue on with the road of how I went into depth with my musical taste, and black metal's next. You folks aren't ready for that, let me tell you. It's so bad, but in a good way. Ah!